We're live again. Yes, we are. We are live, so you can go ahead.
All right, the September 2022 meeting for the Board of Directors of the South Whidbey Parks and Recreation District is called to order at 6:02 p.m. Is there anyone for public comment?
We did not receive any public comment prior, and the only people here are staff and commissioners.
All right, then we shall move along. Has every commissioner had an opportunity to review the minutes?
I have.
Are there any questions or changes?
Nope.
Right, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the August meeting.
I'll second that.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the meeting minutes from the August 2022 Board of Directors meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Jake, aye.
Krista, I.
Matt, aye.
Jennifer, aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the minutes are approved. Moving on to the treasurer's report. Matt.
Okay. Can you guys see it on the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you see the overall slide first, and you can see we're still favorable to plan and slightly improved month over month from last month. Right now sitting at 122K favorable to plan as of the end of July. End of August. Next slide.
I'm sorry, I clicked on something else. There we go.
So you'll see this is heavily skewed toward expenses. The favorable 122K, this is the revenue side of it. It's net 7K favorable year to date. And you can see where that trend has been. So just slightly favorable. You can see it's there's small numbers across the board, but nothing outstanding either way, positive or negative. And if you look at expenses next, you'll see between capital and maintenance expense control, programs is staying even on expense and revenue. So this is the bulk of that 115 out of the 122K. Next slide. And you can see the fund balances are on plan, remain on plan. And if there are no questions on the report, we can pull up the updated vouchers.
On the vouchers, we had some payroll expenses, deferred comp, our semi-monthly tax liability, Department of Retirement. We bought some receipt books at Sound Business Center, water service, Crystal Primo, Log Me In, that's our online meeting software, GoToMeeting, and Pickleball Central for some pickleball nets after redeeming awards. We paid the Chum Run proceeds to the High Ice Scholarship Fund. Got some supplies at SIBO's that you can see there. And some lawn top dressing mix from All Whidbey Topsoil. Some payroll that we didn't get done prior to it going out on Friday. And that was it. Those were the only changes.
I had some questions.
Go for it.
Alrighty. So the R&R cleaning, is that the new monthly?
That's the new
From
one.
417 to 451? Okay. The South Whidbey Parks and Aquatics Foundation invoice for 936. What did we owe them?
That's the swim clinics.
Was that the Chum Run proceeds?
It says
No, that
swim.
was swim. That was the swim clinics.
So they ran a program through us and we give them the proceeds.
Okay, got it. And then Brian Iblings, a refund of $400, partial reservation refund.
He originally rented 2 fields. He was doing a week-long soccer clinic, and then about a week and a half beforehand, said he only needed 1 field.
The balance.
That was it. Okay. were my questions. Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
Okay, if there are no other questions, I'll make a motion to approve the vouchers from the M&O fund for an amount of $80,831.00.
We also need the approval of the property fund, Matt, should be on your screen.
Hang on. Sorry, I'll amend my motion to add $509.63 from the property fund.
I'll second that.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded to approve the vouchers for the M&O fund for $80,831 and the property fund for $509.63. All those in favor say aye.
Jake, aye.
Krista, I.
Matt, aye.
Jennifer, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it and the voucher list is approved. All right, moving on to the staff report, please.
So you can see we've got some upcoming classes. Drop-in pickleball is moving indoors to, South Whidbey Community Center beginning October 3rd. That'll be 10:30 to 12:30, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then again, 5 to 7 p.m. on Wednesday. We've got Nordic Fitness Walking coming up, Puppy Foundation, Reactive Dog Clinic, Canine Nosework, and Magic Club. The school district has notified us that we can begin to utilize their gyms and facilities. Currently in contact with the district to find times, dates to schedule all of those programs. Little dribblers and youth basketball is the big one. Adult drop-in volleyball, expanded pickleball offerings, youth dodgeball, and youth tennis. We're working with the youth soccer club to expand when they have practice times and move teams to the elementary school field. We're going to talk a little bit about this in our field meeting section of the agenda. So just giving you a heads up there, we've been working on that. Here's a picture of the community pickleball day that they had. When was that? That was August?
Last Saturday in August.
Last Saturday in August. Very well attended. Facilities and grounds, we're continuing field maintenance and aeration as top resting as needed. Doing some repair work on baseball fields 2 and 3. We had a little car donut damage again. Took pictures, reported it, but we're, it's probably not going to be caught. Youth soccer is in full season right now, so we're supporting that, which includes a lot more maintenance to the sports complex. We'll be transitioning to a lot more trail work in the coming months, and we'll be laying out an equestrian trail to the left of the ADA trail for access at Trustland. So this would be, we've had issues or had concerns expressed about horses on the ADA trail, and we're going to ask them to take the other trail to go in and then bring off of the one that goes up beside on the eastern edge of the property. We're going to bring a trail back out to the parking lot so they can avoid the 2 ADA trails.
So I remember when we went out and we walked the trails, I remember the one, so as you're facing the trails from the parking lot, I remember what we talked about on the left-hand side.
That's what we're talking about.
Okay.
We're talking about blazing that trail, getting that marked so that we can start looking at that. We feel like that's a good way to have the horse traffic and the walking traffic intermingle and give the ADA trail, just kind of make that no horse traffic on that so that we don't have a wheelchair coming up to a horse or somebody in a walker coming up to a horse in the middle of the park there.
Where do we stand with bicycles on either one?
The conversations I've had in the past, we've talked about just all the traffic being there, but we haven't really addressed how we're going to deal with priority. In general, I believe it was, I think everybody yields to horses, and then bikes are supposed to yield to walkers. And so we would look at implementing that kind of signage. My thought is looking at bicycles, if we are able to get access to the northern portion of Trustland, which is across the road, across 525, that we get an access point there, that we make that area bike-only trails. So that it is, because it has got some slope to it, so some of the bikers might find that really enjoyable, but we can put in some trails over there and kind of segregate them out so they have their own space. That would be my thought.
Do you go to trust fund often? Have you encountered bicycles?
Not often.
Okay.
I was just curious with creating a new trail, if we're also gonna ask that bicycles take one or the other, or if it's just not a problem right now, we just,
Hasn't been
let
an
them
issue that I've known.
pick their choice.
Yeah, it's not really, it's fairly flat over there. Most of there's a couple of hills and not a ton that a mountain biker would be interested in. Most of the mountain biking trailer people would, in my mind, go over to Putney Woods or Saratoga Woods.
Or up to Eevee's.
Or up to
Yeah.
Eevee's, there's a lot more
It's
interest.
not technical enough, and there's not enough miles.
Yeah, there's not a lot
I'm
of
talking
elevation.
with my
There's not a
friends
lot, not a lot of ways to go. So,
Yeah.
and the horse traffic there generally has seemed to be local, like the neighbors bring their horses on. So, we're working to kind of just look at those two ADA trails and kind of preserve them for walking only,
Nice.
or foot traffic only. And maybe that's what we'll kind of, once we get that in, we can kind of do that. My items, we received 2 responses to the request for qualifications for the design of the Aquatic Wellness Center, arranged interviews with both firms with the Joint Pool Committee. We had hoped to have a recommendation for this meeting, but timing is too tight. So we have not yet received reference checks back on those. More on that when we get into the comprehensive plan. And again, our 6 grant applications have now gone through the entire application process. And trying to remember what week we did the review, I think it might have been prior to last meeting. But the preliminary ranked list has been now released, so we now know where we stand. I'll get into that again in the regular agenda. That still needs to be approved by the airport board, and then we'll need to wait on funding levels to see what was successful, what wasn't. And we've started work on, and you guys now have in front of you, the 2023 budget draft, and we'll kind of present that to you and give you a couple weeks to review it and maybe set up a time to get in here with Carrie and myself to walk through it and answer any questions prior to our budget workshop next month. And I would ask that you do that as soon as you can, so that we can, if we don't know the answer, we can find out and, bring that back to you prior to the meeting. I prefer to have our meetings be more just discussion rather than us scrambling to try and find an answer. So you can get back to us, that's really helpful. Our next meeting is the budget workshop, starting at 6, and once we finish the budget workshop, we'll go right into our board meeting. That'll be on October 19th. Any questions on the staff report?
Let's move on to unfinished business, comprehensive plan programs.
Right. Okay, so grant applications. The initial grant rankings for the grant applications were as follows. In local parks, pickleball was ranked 26th, amphitheater was 30th, and artificial sports turf field was tied for 31st. On the Land and Water Conservation Fund, we only had one project. That was the amphitheater, and it was ranked 24th. Youth athletic facilities, the artificial turf sports field was ranked 8th, and the pickleball courts 24th. So, going over what that means. It's unlikely, and I say unlikely because the state legislature and the governor could allocate more funds than expected to this, and we could get funding for one. It's unlikely that the amphitheater and artificial turf field will be funded in the local parks category. So they're ranked 30th and 31st. Looking at the numbers, like the amount of dollars requested, generally it gets to about 24, 25, 26, 27, and then the money runs out. The issue that we run into with pickleball being 26th is that 40% of all of these applications, the money that's allocated, 40% has to go to acquisition projects. Now, that could be a combination project where a portion of it is acquisition, but until they go through and do those calculations, we don't know exactly where that's going to fall and what the dollar amounts are. So we could be on pickleball courts sitting just above the line or just below the line, and we won't know. And the other aspect of that we don't know is some groups like us will get potentially funded, because the good news is youth athletic facilities was was funded last cycle to $10,800,000 in projects. If it's funded to the same level this year, every single project would be funded. So there may be groups out there like us that will get funded $350,000 in youth athletic facilities for our sports turf field, but not get funded in WWRP local parks, okay? And then go, or the reverse would happen. They were like us with Land and Water Conservation Fund, we're going to be out. There's probably not enough funding in Land and Water to get us to the amphitheater. So that means if our amphitheater application in WWRP local parks had been ranked 15th, we probably don't have the money to do that. So we would likely pull our WWRP local parks project out. That would free up funds and drop the list lower in WWRP local parks. We pull it out of Land and Water Conservation Fund because we wouldn't have the funding. We pull it out of, if we were funded in Land and Water and not, reverse that, funded in local parks and not funded in Land and Water and needed both, we could potentially pull our funding, not take the money, and then the list drops down by that amount. So it could go to 27 or 28 as opposed to 26 or 25. This is all just speculation at this point. We don't know until the governor and then the state legislature allocate the actual funds. The more detailed list, we should have sometime end of October. And then we wait to hear what the state budget is. It's very confusing.
But it wouldn't improve our positioning on pickleball.
It could improve our position on pickleball. So what could improve our position on pickleball if, say, a project that was ranked 15th in WWRP local parks and was going to get funded, didn't get funded in another grant that they were using to match and didn't have the money to do the project without it. Because then that would take that money and go, okay, that money's gone. Or they didn't actually have the match that they said, or they get eliminated because they can't move forward quickly enough. Some of those reasons have happened in the past, and they just go to the next project that's viable online. So it is conceivable that that could happen. It is highly unlikely that it would reach down to number 30 or 31 in local parks. It is unlikely that it would reach 24th in Land and Water Conservation. What I could see happening in the Land and Water Conservation Fund is a couple years back, that's how we got funding, is with the property purchase. The next year, they do the Land and Water Conservation Fund again, but they just go to the next, it's usually 8 to 10 projects, the next 10 projects on the list. Well, other projects have fallen off in that time frame. We could get funded in a year. We don't know. So it's all a crapshoot at this point. We're waiting to hear, but right now, if you ask me what I think stood the best chance, it looks like the turf sports field is definitely going to be funded in youth athletic facilities. Pickleball courts should be funded. I think the reason that ranked lower is because it's youth athletic facilities, and the sports turf field is more of a youth sport field as opposed to the pickleball courts being more geared towards the aging population that are out there using it far more adult. I would see pickleball having a good chance in local parks. It's just a question of where that line goes. So pickleball could be the project that we get out of this, which would be a great thing. If not, we can then look at next year and looking at, okay, what are we going to do funding wise? If we're talking about doing a bond issue, we could tack on an extra amount to finish off the pickleball, or we could look at doing the sports turf field and just kind of factor that in and add that into our bond issue ask. That's up to the board to decide, but it would be a shame to leave. Well, for pickleball courts, that would be $200 and some odd thousand, and for the artificial turf courts, it would be $350,000. So.
Yeah, just to show how things go year to year. In the last cycle in WWRP local parks, pardon me, they funded the top. Let's see. Top 36. So just to show how funds kind of can ebb and flow year to year and how project lists can flow year to year. So 36 was funded in WWRP local parks last time. And in LWCF last time it was, let's see, they funded 23.
They might have
So-
funded 23, Matt, over that 2-year period.
Yeah, that was in the 2020 cycle. Both of those, 37 local parks and 23.
So.
So,
Keep-
yeah, so
Keep in mind too, it's not just as simple as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 40% of that in local parks has to go towards acquisition. So it may be project 1, 5, 7, 23, and 26 that are funded, and then it'll be a total of 36 projects, but you might not get down to project number 36 in the actual rank list. It's a really confusing and painful system. But that's what we got. So, all in all, I thought the process went really well. I thought we were competitive. I think in local parks, it was an extremely competitive year. I think there was a difference. I want to say it was like around 4 points, 4 to 5 points between us and the top project. So it was a very, very tight year this year. When we went back and did our review as the committee that reviewed all those projects, we talked through it and said, is there any surprises? Is there anything that shocked you? And no, projects I thought were going to be higher were higher. I was a little surprised at where Brookfield fell a little lower, but looking at the other projects above it, I was like, no, they kind of fit right in there. They're right in that ballpark. That's kind of where I put them. Looking at this and looking at the data might be interesting going forward, because maybe what we should have been doing is going, instead of doing 3 separate projects, pickleball, amphitheater, and sports field, maybe we should have brought it as one, because some of the highest ranked projects did everything.
Well, they bundled.
They bundled. So interestingly enough, that might have more impact to the committee to say, hey, we're doing all of this at once, and it might bring some economy of scale to some of these projects. So something to think about if we're not successful on these is maybe when we come back in 2 years, we look at this and go, why don't we bundle these 3? Get a design firm on board, spend a little money to get schematic, or not schematic, but conceptual design done, and take it in that way. It limits a little bit more how much you can ask for, because you still are limited in local parks to $500,000. So we couldn't get 500 for pickleball, 500 for the amphitheater, 500 for the sports turf field, but we could get 500 for all 3. So it's a question of how much money do we really want out of these, and what are we willing to sacrifice. So that's just, we were trying to get, I think, the bigger bite, and we also didn't want to be like, well, if we don't want to get to the end and go, oh, well, now we got nothing. We have a good shot at getting the pickleball courts done out of this, which would be amazing. So I would consider, if that's what we got out of this process, I would consider it a A+ level success. I think right now I'm feeling like a solid B. It would be nicer if we were a little higher on that local parks list. But like I said, when I looked at the prior years, the prior 2 years when I've evaluated, I've looked at some of these projects and gone, why did you even bring that? You didn't even follow the directions. You're not listening. This is not the process for this project. You should be in trails. So there was a bunch that were just doing the shotgun and hoping something would stick. We didn't have that this time. Everybody was on it. They nailed. There was very few presentations, if any. There was 2 at the bottom that I was like, yeah, those guys suck. Other than that, I mean, just
Everybody brought their A game.
everybody brought their A game. It was competitive. And you got to keep in mind, we're competing against City of Seattle. We're competing against Tacoma Parks. We're competing against these entities that have professional grant writers that all they do is write these grants. And they have marketing teams and support teams. We're here with our little park district doing our thing, you know, and we're up there with the big boys throwing punches. We're doing just fine. I think that the committee's helped amazingly, and we got this done. I think the funds that we got committed, I was 50,000 for the pickleball courts, 50,000 plus in donations or committed donations. The sports turf field, they went out and in 3 weeks raised, I think it was 18,000 total. Amphitheater, we had the donated time and 15,000, we were 45,000 there and donated stuff for that project. So those things helped us really big on some categories. And I'll have to look through and kind of do a debrief on everything and go, where did we fall down in our scoring? What items were not
Okay, good.
pushed to, where do we lose points? Because when you're talking a difference of 4 points, that means like 2 people ranked you 1 point lower. You know, or on a project scope score, you were ranked 1 point lower than 3 points. You know, it really is that big of a deal to get those. And the debrief was really interesting because talking with another guy who's been on there as long as I have and longer, we're now the senior members of that team. They were like, well, when do you want to schedule your presentations? Like, is there a specific time? I'm like, oh yeah, you want it on like the second or third day, like right about either first thing in the morning or right after lunch. Because otherwise people aren't focused, they're not listening. You don't want to be at the end of the week because people have kind of started to check out on their scoring, and you don't want to be the first projects up. So you want to be like Tuesday, Wednesday, early afternoon, or early morning. And they're like, really? I'm like, don't think we look at this? Of course we look at this. And then when we're targeting these things, it's like when we're targeting the presentations, if you don't target the need, how the project meets the need, and the big ticket items, what are you doing? Because we score them out of 5, but then they multiply those by 3. So those are worth 15 points. So if I take 1 point off, you've lost 3 points right there. In this game, that means that's the difference between funded or not funded. So that's where I need to kind of go back, and they have a great kind of system. I won't say great, it's kind of a pain in the butt to look through, but it shows you where everybody scored. And so you can see, okay, well, I fell down in need. I needed to do more to show that this was really needed. More data, or what was I missing? So we'll do some looking into that before we go into the next round, or the next go around, if we're still doing this. And all that stuff will be still recorded in there. Any questions on those?
Where would the state budget be finals?
Good question. If I remember right, generally it's like the first of the year, but I can't remember exactly. Could have been an extended session. Didn't approve the budget. Hard to get over. I honestly don't remember, but I believe it should get a recommendation from the governor fairly soon. The request, we were at 100 million last year. They were talking about going to 135 million. WWRP program, which includes local parks. That wouldn't mean that local parks would get 135 million. It would mean that they would get and so it is really one of those, I trust the RTO staff to give us that information. I think the request was 100 million last time, and it's going to be more than that this time, but there was also some talk of somebody was going to request 155 million, and I'm like, okay, let's just get to where we can speculate all we want and do all the calculations. I drive my wonderful wife nuts when we go to barrel races, and she's up in about 2 hours, and I'm like, so if you run a 15.332, you'll be in the lead. And she's like, I don't even care, I'm just going to go run the race. So my thought is, we run our race, we see where the governor comes out, we see what the state legislature's reaction to that is, and then we can make some plans at that point. At this point, it's time to wipe the sweat from our brow, give everybody that contributed, the committees. Matt was a huge help. Big, huge thank you and pat on the back. Great job. I don't think think there's anything more we could have done, you know, knowing what we knew at the time. Now, we'll go back and, like I said, scrutinize these for the next chance at that and see where we go from there. Any other questions?
Just to characterize, you were talking about this kind of roll down idea where, you've got a grant applicant in 27th ranked place or ranked 27th to the funds roll down to them, but they can't match, for example, because they didn't get another grant. If you look at the the WWRP local parks from the last cycle, out of 37 awards, there were 10 who had to pass. So it dropped a full 10 beyond where their normal cutoff would have been, all the way to the 37th ranked project. So just as an idea, that's 20 high 20%, 30%.
So you're saying we got a chance?
I'm saying we got a chance. So there's a chance. Yeah.
Yep. You just got to stay and play.
Aquatic Wellness Center. We met with both firms. The firms were ARC Architects and Rice Fergus Miller. Matt and Eric were both there. We interviewed them, asked them a series of questions, gave them an opportunity to ask us questions. I'm currently in the process of checking references. We talked about the different projects in their little their little response to our qualifications that they sent us. So I've reached out to the sponsors of those projects to get references on them, 3 each. What we're going to do at this point is we're going to look at reconvening the Joint Pool Committee, probably since Matt is out of town sometime next week, to review the references. I'm going to try and hound the hell out of these people and get those back to us as soon as possible. I have already received 1 of the 6 back, but I need 5 more. And I did just send them out yesterday. So the good news is both presentations, both packets that they sent of qualifications were great. I think Matt will probably echo this. We both thought either firm would have been a good choice if it had been our only option amongst other bad choices. But with the 2 of them together, it makes our decision a little more difficult. Because now we're trying to choose between 2 quality candidates. It's a difficult option to have, but it's a good option to have.
Makes the reference checks all the more.
It makes the reference checks important, but as I said after the interviews, we had a brief discussion, and I said, well, generally, if you're putting a reference down, you're putting down somebody that they're going to say good things about you. I have yet to call a reference check and have the person go, wow, yeah, they sucked, they were horrible. But it could happen. Or they could give us some insight that would make it not fit with our constituency, and we could go, okay, that would be great in Seattle, but that won't work here. They did it this way, and it's just, that's how they do things. That's not going to fly here. I honestly don't know, but we've got some great questions. Matt put together some great questions. I couldn't have added anything. I added 1 at the end, and I think Rich gave us 1. And sent that out, and we've already got 1 back from the William Short Aquatic Center over on
Port Angeles.
Sorry. So that's where we are with that. Matt, did you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I just say they each referenced 1 most recently constructed facility when they did their proposals. The first group referenced the City of Sammamish Community Center, which is up on the Issaquah Plateau. It's a YMCA and city community center combined, and they have a drop-in fee. You can drop in there for, I think it's $10, but they also have a try the Y thing that makes it free if you want to sign up for that. And then the other firm referenced a recently constructed facility in East Tacoma called the East Side Community Center. It's 4 or 5 miles east of I-5, just before you get to the Tacoma Dome. And their drop-in fee is $5. So I went out and swam and worked out in the gym and ran the track and played basketball in both of them just to kind of experience it for myself. So if you feel like you want to see a facility that these two groups have constructed just as a personal reference point, those two facilities are out there, and they're not too far away and they're not too expensive to go try, and they're both pretty nice. So anyway, I just pass that on just as a chance if you want to go put your hands on the kind of work that these two firms that have bid the project so far have done recently in the local area.
Thank you, Matt. All right, we ready to move on to the field meeting update?
Yes. After our meeting last month with Matt and Eric, we received the field request from the soccer club, and we received it on a Tuesday. And they were asking to start practices the following Monday. That is a very short turnaround for that group. Specifically considering that they did not contact us prior and had advertised on their website, and their numbers have increased significantly again over the spring when we told them you need to contact us before. So Sky and I met with the soccer club president and another board member in this very room, and we kind of laid that down and said, look.
A board member from their
board.
club, okay.
Their board. So two Southwood Beach Soccer Club board members, Sky and myself. And we kind of discussed, look, you've got, we are now, if we're not over 300, we're pushing it in the club itself. So it has gone from about 245 in spring, from about 200 last fall to 300 approximately this fall. The issue we have is not one of numbers of kids, it is one of limited time frame. They have scheduled all of their activities from 5 to 6 in the window from 5 to 6 p.m. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So our meeting was to go, look guys, we already told, because we sent an email and we said, hey, this doesn't work. There's too many kids all at once. It monopolizes that entire side. We also have the high school soccer team that is the girls team that is there supposedly from 3 to 5. Are they there from 3 to 5 now, or are they still staying over?
They're a little over today.
A little over today, okay. So we're working on that because they've been staying over, and apparently they talked to the soccer club and they said it was okay. But it's not the soccer club's decision, it's our decision, because that involves parking and people being on fields and people using goals and people being in space. So we were like, no, we schedule it 3 to 5. So we're working with the high school on that. But you gotta think about this, at 5 o'clock, we have 2 high school girls teams, no, one, probably heavily loaded, one team, so probably 20 to 25 kids on that team. And 300, on Monday, I think it's 170.
Yeah.
170 kids coming in cars with parents, and it could be 2 to 3 to a car. Parking, dropping kids off, leaving. And then you've got to remember that we also have 4 pickleball courts in one parking lot that can be used. We've got people that want to come and walk their dogs in the park. We've got other things going on. So we had that meeting. In the meantime, Sky talked to the school district, Paul Laggers at the school district, about the use of the elementary school field. And we said, hey, here's an offer for you. We'd like to be able to use that field all fall. If you allow us to use that field all fall and through the winter, we will take the first 2 weeks of boys high school soccer practice up on our fields because we won't have the demand. That gets something out of our park and onto that field. We then went back because we got, finally, after a week and a half trying to get Paul to get back to us, we finally got an okay on that. We met with the soccer club, talked to them about it, and said, that was part of that meeting, and said, hey, how about you move U6, U8, which is their largest group, down to that field. They got a porta potty over there. I think they moved the U15 team. U13 team down, which helps. I mean, it's still pretty crowded up there, but it takes one team out of there Monday, Wednesday.
And they were willing to move some of the younger kids, so they were taking 4 to 5 o'clock
Okay,
practices.
so we did some
So
shifting
we
in
were
time.
able to expand that.
So that was for this season to get through the fall. We then, go ahead.
So in negotiating the use of the elementary field, does that mean that we also picked up the maintenance thereof?
No.
Okay,
We did not agree to that.
that's a win.
That's a win. Then we went and said, all right, going forward, we don't want you putting anything on your website or scheduling until you talk to us. And we sit down and we put together a plan, because this model, if you have 350 kids come spring, it's not gonna work. You need to vary your scheduling. It can't be everybody all at once at 5, Monday through Thursday. There are other days of the week, there are other times of the day. So you need to start at 4 with some teams. You need to say your practice could be between 4 and 7, Monday through Thursday. That would eliminate everything. And then put it down as, okay, it's a coach's draft, everybody comes in. We're gonna give each coach at each age level, draw out of a hat, 1 through whatever, and 1 through 10. All right, so you're number 1, you pick your first practice time. Great, you go 1 through 10, and then you come back and go to your second practice time, 10 through 1. So 1 gets their first choice, and then they get the last pick. 10 gets the last choice in the first round, first choice in the second. So you pick your times, but we set there's this many spaces available. So between 4 and 7, Monday through Thursday, would spread everybody out. There would be much more space. Everybody would have parking. It should be much better to go. That's our plan. But we're also going to start that discussion before they've posted anything on their website in October of this year for next spring. Because we don't want them to come back to us with the schedule and go, okay, everybody's 5 to 6, Monday through Thursday, next spring, and us go, we already told you this. So we're gonna work with them and make sure that we get that, because the thing we got from them was, well, we can't change times now, we can't ask them to change times. I said, well, you don't dictate to us when you practice on the park district fields. We tell you if it's available, and I don't wanna be put in the position where I have to look at you and go, no, that time doesn't work. You've got too many teams at that time, find someplace else. Find another time. So we got to a solution for fall. We're working on an ongoing solution to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Is there anyone managing traffic on Langley Road in and out that would?
No, and speaking, I know this last weekend, it sounds like it was completely overflowed. Because there were also games that were going on the upper field at the park. There was the huge cross-country meets.
That was on this side, yeah.
Yeah, but there was still, because the parking was so full off of Langley, people were coming over here trying to park and having to try and walk through. But even then, some folks were getting upset because they couldn't find parking in the upper fields because there's games up there. So they were, parking down a little low, having to walk.
Got a little overwhelming. Yeah, and it's something that, we need the club, we need to communicate better with the club, which we're working on, and I think we already did communicate pretty well, but they can't walk up to us 5, 7 days, 6 days before their first practice and go, here's what we want to do. They got to communicate ahead and go, here's what we're thinking about a month before you post it on the website. Here's what we're thinking for spring. Okay, that's not going to work.
In the past, as a whole, the numbers were just significantly lower, so it wasn't as big of a deal.
In the past, it was not as big a deal, because if we had 100 kids show up Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 100 kids in that park split over 4 days,
Yeah.
2 times a week, it's not as big a deal. 300 kids in that park over 4 days, when you've got 170 coming in with cars and parents and everything, and then you've also got 20 high school kids leaving, potentially at the same time, you've got a lot of traffic in and out. One of the guys that works over at the school district was, had next kid on a team said it took him 20 minutes to even back out of his parking spot after practice. So,
So irrespective of elementary school, middle school, high school, whatever, it's one club, right?
and so.
Do they understand what a plan is?
Yeah, and this,
Is
and
anyone doing a matrix?
Probably not.
But they seem fairly receptive to why you and Sky were talking to them and what type of issues this is presenting to.
I don't know that I'd go right to receptive, but they seem to be understanding what we were talking about. I mean, I think and now that we've already put it on our calendars at the end of October, we're sitting down with them. It should put that on their radar, and we'll have that discussion and go, guys, here's where we're at. You can't do this to us again. That we're not going down this road. So you need to spread these people out. And if that means that you don't get 300, but you get 255 kids in your program next spring, that's what it is, because we can't handle 300 class.
well, and realize that this is the way soccer clubs around the region schedule things. We were part of a couple different clubs that they ran the Woodenville fields, for example. Early practices at 3 would be for little kids, and then at 4 would be for slightly bigger kids, and 5 to 6 would be for bigger kids, and high schoolers would be from 6 to 7:30, and the oldest kids would be from 7:30 to 9. So that was standard, and you would slowly get later as you got older as a kid in the club. That was just the way it worked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, generally that's how it does. I mean, I've been a part of scheduling in many different organizations, from youth soccer to hockey to anything and everything you can think of. And it's always varied in schedule because you can't take that traffic away.
Sure.
So in getting the elementary fields, that's a huge win, and that's absolutely wonderful. Do we have full autonomy over that scheduling, or we?
Well, we were given anything after 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. We could
So
vote.
there's not gonna be little rug pulled out from underneath us?
Who knows? I can't guarantee that, but at this point,
But it's progress at this point.
it's progress. So we have access to that, and the club is using it under our auspices. So we are not being charged for it, neither are they, and they're able to have the program. And I think what we'll continue to do is work with the school on that and try and keep that in play and not lose that going forward. And maybe we look at, because right now there's a porta potty over there. Maybe we look at something more permanent in the future if we continue to do this. But that's that was our initial, like, I wouldn't have suggested that. Tom actually suggested it, because I wouldn't have suggested, and I wouldn't go to Tom and say, hey, we hold these guys out for 2 weeks. What if we allow them on and we just use that field the rest of the year? Because the response we always got when we asked to use the field was, well, I have to save it for those 2 weeks, which you never let me on. No, Tom brought that idea. That's a no-brainer. Yeah, I'm cool with that. Let's try and get it, because it takes traffic off. And that U13 team will probably be playing a lot later than the U6, U8s. So it gets traffic off, and it gets that traffic off and keeps it off longer. Because I'm not going to bring those guys back in. I will not recommend you allowing it or bringing it to me, because I will go, no, leave them over there. They've been practicing there all year. I'm just going to keeps the traffic off our field and reduces impact. So that's where we are with that. Any other questions on that?
One more expansion with it. The other piece about having them, like giving them big time slots and them just saying, you guys figure out what your coaches want. At this moment, we're more having to do all of their scheduling. They just basically say, here's how many teams we have. These are the times and dates. Figure out where they're going to fit. This way, we're switching that up. So they're basically going to be sending us, okay, here's the schedule of who we have on each of these fields on these certain times. And it puts a lot less work on our end.
It is, and the thing I would say with all of that is we give them the use of these kits for free because we don't run the program. If we have to step in and continuously schedule and put this all together, expend staff time, why are we allowing them to do this?
Mhm.
It takes away that, and we didn't broach that topic with anybody, other than talking amongst ourselves about it, but if Sky's having to sit there and work on this with them for 5 straight days, and they're getting fields free, that's something that we need to put back on the club to schedule appropriately, and to be able to say to them, hey, if you guys don't do this, then I'll tell you how many slots you have, and you can have those slots for 5 to 6, but after that, you gotta find a different place to take the kids, or a different time. You can bring it to whenever. So we'll look at that and try and, fix some things up for the spring and get better as we go. Anything else on that?
Moving on to the budget, initial draft.
Budget initial draft. Okay, so, the commissioners that are here should have a piece of paper in front of them. I don't even know if that's the most recent draft because we are still working on some formula issues that Matt could speak to. I don't want to go down into minutia at this point. I don't want to go line by line. What I do want to say about this is the premises and the assumptions that we published last month that we gave you are included in this draft. Okay, the levy number is included at 1.3 million. The salaries and wage step increase and ECI, the CPI, is included. The benefits that we've planned out are included. Capital projects, we're starting to put some stuff in there on that, and then we're looking at that. My big thing with this, for this month, is to give you, as board members, your homework assignment. It's a very important homework assignment. We will continue this process over the next 2 board meetings. Our October board meeting is our budget workshop. That's where we will answer questions about the budget, talk about it in more detail. We should have a little more detail on items such as the levy. We should know better what that amount is going to be more accurately. With any increases, we should get that number. We usually get it the last week of September at some point, what the assessed value for the district actually is, and then that is what the January 1st budget will be based on. So we will have all of that, and then in November, we have the budget hearing. The budget hearing should just be a simple, anybody in the public have a comment on our budget. At that point, our budget should be so locked in and done that we don't need to discuss anything, hopefully, as a board, and we are just asking the public if they would like to comment. We take those comments, we close the budget hearing, and the board approves the budget at that meeting in the regular meeting. That is the process. My goal with you tonight is to get you to start looking through this document. We will send out an updated spreadsheet as we get through it. We're trying to correct and make some formulas and the layout a little bit easier to understand and fathom. But what I would ask each of you to do is over the next couple of weeks, read through it. If you need to sit down with either Carrie or myself to go through it, we are happy to do so. Call us and we can sit down with you either in person or on a Zoom call, walk through it, answer any questions you may have, talk about what each thing means. If you have questions about how formulas are written or what's coming, we can answer those there. I would prefer to get to our budget workshop, have the close to final version, and have that budget workshop be, anybody have any questions about the budget? Here's what it is now, here's any changes since the last version that was sent out, and have no questions because we've nailed everything before then. Or we can address some questions that might be asked. If we just get asked questions in the budget workshop, sometimes we might not have the answer right in front of us. So it gives us the opportunity, if we don't know, to go back, research through, and go, oh, this is why we did that. So I would ask that you get back to us within the next 2 weeks. If you need to sit down with us, we're happy to do that. Then it makes that whole process a heck of a lot smoother. Any questions on any of that? And then, we do have, and again, I know, so I'm putting up on the screen here, I don't know if it'll.
Actually, Doug, I do have one question.
Go on.
The estimates, I'm assuming, are rough, high-sided estimates.
For which?
Well, across the board, as I'm looking at this.
For 22
20.
year end.
22 year end.
Yeah,
They're estimates, I don't know that they're high estimates. We anticipated with our budget that we would be dipping into the reserve. We knew that, it may be more than we thought, we are still looking at that. The bigger determining factors are going to be whether or not we have a basketball program. Because right now, we're looking at revenue for programs, and we know we're looking pretty good if we have that basketball program. If we don't, that revenue is not going to be realized, and we won't get there. So it could be worse than we anticipated, but we don't anticipate it being horrible. We are, well, I would say cautiously optimistic
Yeah,
that we'll have a basketball program.
it all depends on that main gym at the community center and when they finish it.
So if the school district finishes that in time, we will have a basketball program. If they do not, we will not.
And part of the basketball situation is that we had collected basketball revenue last winter for a January league.
Yeah,
And then we were not able to run the league, and so we had to do a lot of refunds. So that put us in the hole, starting out negative revenue for basketball.
So, I don't know that they're high estimates, but they're estimates.
When do they anticipate that gym being completed?
They anticipate right now it's gonna be done in December.
they said between October and December. But they'd also told me that it was gonna start in June, and it didn't start until August, so.
So,
in the last we had talked, there was still discussion on the why part of it. You know, I'm assuming it's based,
so
because
we have been given access to the other gyms,
oh, good,
but limited times.
okay.
So we can do some things, but the basketball league really requires us having that gym.
Got it.
So that's the determining factor on that.
But you did open up because the last I left off on the
Oh, yeah,
discussion,
yeah.
that there was nothing.
Oh, yeah.
There was nothing, and then we followed up, and I followed up again and got the, oh, sorry, yes, we just had our meeting, here's what you can.
Good.
So,
Great.
we did get that back from the school district, they said, yes, we just met, and here's what we can offer you, and we were, so that came through, we finally got that. And again, the spreadsheet here, Matt has been going through and editing, so he's got his newest one that he's working on. We're trying to work out all the formulas. There was some stuff in there that I didn't create this initial sheet. Matt has been modifying it, and Matt has been doing an incredible job. But I'm beginning to get to the point where, and Carrie I think is on the same page as me. I don't know if Matt's there yet. Where I'm looking at this and going, maybe we need to scrap and start over with a whole new sheet because it is just very difficult to manage all of the formulas and what puts what where on our end. And one little mistake that you make can send it all into disarray, and you've got to figure out what you did. So
Yeah, I would just say I'm not ready to do that. This is a good working spreadsheet. And let me just walk through so you guys you'll see this version here in the next couple weeks, but just to remind you, this is what we considered and approved when we did the levy calculation. And if you remember, these early fundamental principles, ones that we have to have cash to run the park for the beginning of the year, just go to that top section. So that first line, the beginning cash, so we have to have enough cash to run the park, and we will take from other places to run the park with that money. And as a result, the second objective, which is keeping the reserve fund, enough to fund the park for one 4-month or 3-month period going forward. Remember, we had to draw from the reserve fund and go negative, or not negative, go below our objective level for this period, and that's why we ultimately decided to set the levy value to where we did. So you can see that through the full year of 2023, as we projected, we're going to be below the target. You know, the reserve balance is supposed to be 365,000, and we're going to be 70,000 below that, or 75,000 below that. But then that will recover, and you can see for the years 2024 to 2027, both the cash value at the beginning of the year and the reserve will be whole. And then the line above that you see is a modification we made just to show. Remember, the second, or the further objectives were to fund capital projects and to fund a capital reserve. This is showing money going into that capital reserve. So 7,000 in 2024, 31,000 in 2025, 34 and 54,000. And then you can see another 55,000 in 2028. And our objective was to fund that to $250,000. So steadily over time, fund it to 250K. So we would have, for example, the reserve to match that grant that we get that other communities or entities can't match. You know, if that's the way we access those funds, or the property acquisition that comes out of the blue that we hadn't planned, or the maintenance item that comes up out of the blue that we hadn't planned. So that's this kind of summary just really gives you that snapshot. We're going to dip in the reserve and then recover. Our cash will be okay the whole time, and we will start funding the capital reserve. The other components in the detail, if you look in you'll see the capital budget. We will use that the additional capital to fund both infrastructure projects and comprehensive plan programs over the 5-year period. So that's the other thing you'll see that reflects what we talked about in the levy calculation discussions. So those are the big takeaways from the spreadsheet. Carrie and I are going through and making sure that the changes to the levy are reflected correctly. And the other change that Carrie wanted to make that I think is a good change is to accurately reflect the transfers that we make at year end in the month and the year that they're made. So what you see in 2024 in these first 3 rows, where we transfer either cash into our beginning cash, or we transfer money into the reserve or into the capital reserve, that really does happen in January of the following year. So that's why you see this 101,000 transfer into the reserve and this $7,000 transfer into the capital reserve highlighted in 2024. It's 2023 year-end money, but it actually transacts in 2024. So this is the most correct reflection of what we actually do. And that was based on Carrie's good input. So that's why we've made these changes. And that's why, as Doug said, we're juggling to make sure that the calculations are now correct with this different representation. But we're 90% there. And you can see that's why this section exists now, to show exactly what we are transferring from where to where and what year it's happening in. And this represents January of each of these years. So that's the kind of the fundamental change in the way we present the information to better align it with what we actually do in actual practice. So anyway, when we send this out, like Doug said, you can schedule time to review it with Carrie or with Doug, or if you want to talk to me, I can review it with you. I'd be glad to. Anyway, that's the quick overview.
Let me just clarify that for this process for the budget, we are literally talking about 2023. Okay, the 2024 through 2027 is estimated. We put time into it, so it should be a fairly good estimate, but it is estimated and it is based on what we currently know. That can change. So I'm not saying it's going to change a ton. Hopefully it won't, because it's a good picture. But when we approve the budget, when the board approves the budget in November, it will not be approving 2024 through 2027. It will be approving budget for 2023. Those are the most important numbers. The rest of this planning is for our use as a district to kind of look at, hey, what have we got for capital? What projects do we want to try and tackle? What's the top priority? Where are we going with all this? That's why we do this. And these will be the actual budget numbers that will be recorded with the county, whereas these are not recorded with the county at all. 2025, 2024 through 2027 are for our use only. Okay, so
That's helpful, thank you.
yeah, we are a strange district in that we don't have ongoing funding like a port or I think a school district even has ongoing funding year to year to year, and they go up by 1%. We do not have that. We go up intra-term of our levy. We go up by 1% each year, but then at the end of that, we reset again and start over. So this is our reset start over. So this will be, that's why you can see, if you look on the taxes, you'll see that this year, our total taxes in this line is $980,236. And next year it's going up to 1.3 million.
Because of the levy that we passed that increased to
Because of the
22
levy,
cents,
yeah.
right? So it passed, but
Right.
the collection doesn't start till January.
Right. So and that's also why we have that beginning cash number, 355. That is 1/4 of our expenses for the year for 2023. So this 355, 370, our beginning cash, is there so we can pay our bills if we don't get a penny from the levy until April, which can happen. Not very often, but it does happen. So just, those are things we can talk about if you want to meet separately and walk through this with us. You know, Carrie and I have been working through this budget for 10 years now. You've been working through a lot of the programming side, but we've been doing this budget framework for about 10 years. We're pretty familiar with it. The changes we're making, I think, are making this better. You know, I want feedback too onto this spreadsheet if it's not something that is understandable, as well as the treasurer's report, if you want to see something different there. Because the treasurer's report is tough for us too, because we look at it and we go, yeah, our balance sheet right now looks great, looks fine. But we've also got, we do a lot of capital projects at the end of the year. So we're positive $100 and something thousand, but we're going to be talking next about asphalt projects that are 32,000. And we've got, you know, basketball stuff that's coming up that if we don't get the revenue, that could kick us pretty heavily. We're not in any danger. I don't want to look at it that way, but I want to look at with the treasurer's report, maybe there's a more accurate way we can kind of do it. Carrie suggested maybe a total in that line item versus like total project revenue, total program revenue versus actual year to date, so that you can see what percent we are of year to date. You know, maybe that's easier for you to understand. I want you to look at these reports and tell us if there's something you'd like to see differently, if there's something that would make it easier for you to grasp where we currently are.
Just to go a little further on that, so when you're looking at our loss statement, the budget to actual one, so there's the column that's actual, and then the budgeted amount, and then the difference, right? And I would suspect that you guys have no idea what the budgeted column is based on, whether that's a prorated amount for the whole year of the whole amount of the budget, or whether it's, you know, what we actually would expect to have it, and it's a mixture of those. I don't know if you're following what I'm saying.
But again, if you want to sit down with us and walk through those, we're happy to walk through those as well. I just want to make sure that what we're doing, because when Carrie and I met with Matt grasps this stuff really well, and sometimes we'll get dizzy because we're like, wait, huh? What? Hold on. And we have to go through it again to get it. So if this is not giving you what you need as a commissioner to understand what we're saying, I really want you to
Just hang on, just 1 second, just to make sure that you're not mischaracterizing something. You were talking about, you mentioned the word accuracy. The report that we have is accurate. It's as accurate as the data that we load into it. So I would not question the accuracy of the report. it's as accurate as the data we put into it, which we load from the county and we enter from our own budget. So to Carrie's point, capital projects are loaded level for the year. You can see that. We spread that value equally across the year. If we have a change at the end of the year where we want to insert a project, then that's a change we need to highlight in our budget. Execution, because right now we show a level loading throughout the year for something like capital. We show actual relative loading month to month in other categories. But don't question the accuracy of the report because it's data that we ourselves load. If we think it's bad data, we should call that out.
I'm not questioning the accuracy of the data or the accuracy of the report. I'm saying that the picture that we're getting is not fully where we are right now and where we should be at the end of the year. Yes, you're absolutely right. The data that we put in there for capital projects is absolutely accurate. And we try and spread it over the year as best we can where we know it's going to be. The problem comes in is we don't always do things exactly where we want to do them and when we want to do them and where we think they're going to be. So yes, you're absolutely right, Matt. Yeah, I was not questioning the accuracy of the data or the accuracy of the report. What I was saying is the picture might not be as completely accurate as what we think we're showing them.
Right, and my point is, we have it level loaded. If, for example, next month you see that there's a $10,000 capital line item for November, right now it's loaded at 5,900 level loaded for the year, then that should reflect 10,000 plus in that line item if we expect to expend that in November. If we don't, and it's the way it is, then the board should be expecting that we will not spend that in November. So if you know that there are things to be updated or corrected for year-end expenditures, I would say please enter that, calculate those, deliberate on those, settle those, and then I can present them to the board as part of the report next month, and we can get board concurrence on those changes to the report and to the budget projection.
I mean, and I'm not saying that. There's nothing that we're adding or deleting. There's nothing that we're looking at anyway that way. What I'm saying is simply when we project this out, we don't change the projection once we enter it. You know, I mean, we're struggling right now to keep up with all the duties that we're doing, everything else, and to try and modify that as we go through the year is pretty much impossible. To look at this and say, we know we're going to do an asphalt project in November, we don't know that. If we have no money, we might not do it. If we're looking at this and we go, okay, when we're planning out this, we try and plug it in the month we think it's going to happen. It may not happen in that month, and that's what I'm saying, is we might spread this out over the entire year because we don't know when we're going to do the capital projects. We try our best to estimate it accurately, but we can't go back in and go, okay, we can, but it would take so much time to go back in and go, okay, well, we didn't do that in May, so we're going to move that over here now. And we're going to keep that out because we haven't done that yet.
I get it. I'm just saying we can't call out the accuracy of the report and then say, well, to make it more accurate, we would have to expend staff time that we don't have. So we need to say, accept the accuracy that we have, or we need to change the staff priorities in order to apply requisite time to increase the accuracy one way or the other. Do you understand?
I get what you're saying. I'm saying I don't question the accuracy of the report. I'm questioning the picture it presents may not be completely accurate as to where we currently are. I'm not questioning the accuracy of the data.
We're saying the method of presentation.
I'm not even saying the method of presentation. I'm saying that we need to accept. I'm on the acceptance line, Matt. I'm not on the let's change the report is accurate for what it is. I'm not calling out the accuracy of the report. I'm saying the picture.
Okay. So do you want? Should we pull up the treasurer's report and then the P&L column or the P&L sheet and highlight areas that you think are inaccurate in the picture?
No, no,
I'd be glad to do that.
nope, I'm good.
So if that's true, if you do believe that, and we can use this discussion as the impetus to do a more careful review of that before Carrie sends it to me for next month, I would greatly appreciate that.
Okay.
And I'd be glad to then review it with Carrie and you.
We'll look at it. Any other thoughts on the budget?
So to be clear, Friday, September 30th is your goal for folks to review,
Review.
have their
get
questions, get
questions,
them to you,
concerns,
be
comments.
satisfied.
Get back to us. What we will do is as we get more down the road, get more information, we will get that out to you. I don't anticipate the levy amount will go down. If anything, I'm gonna guess it will go up. So I don't anticipate any issues that way. But I would just say yes, get us anything you can before September 30th. I mean, that would be ideal. If it takes an extra week, awesome. We'll still work with you, obviously. But we want you to have the opportunity to look through this and not have, understand what we're talking about and what we're showing you. Okay? Anything else?
All right, shall we move on to new business?
Yes.
All right.
Let me get back there. Okay, so asphalt projects. Last month we talked about potential asphalt projects that were included in this year's capital for this point, for this year. And we are looking at going out to bid on what would be the following projects. And these would just be what we think could be about $32,000, which is about what we had budgeted for this. We talked about it in the last board meeting. So this would be an overlay of 250 feet by 20 feet from the south entrance of Community Park, the speed bump to the speed bump at full 2-inch compacted depth, which is about 5,000 square feet. An overlay of 90 feet by 8 foot along the totem pole area by the playground existing path at full 2-inch compacted depth. So that's from the totem pole all the way over to the skate park, I believe. And then the new pavement, 215 feet by 8 feet from the existing path around the backside of the skate park at a full 2-inch compacted depth. So those would be the bid, and then we would do an alternate bid just to kind of get a pricing on it. Full overlay of 330 feet by 125 feet for the sports complex upper parking area at a full 2-inch compacted depth. So that would overlay the whole upper parking lot at the sports complex.
You and I did that at the same time.
So we do not anticipate that would be done, but we want to get a pricing on it. So it gives us an idea. We could then potentially look at that in the coming years and go, okay, well, we know about this. And again, the more we do, the cheaper the price. So,
Right.
you know, if we're looking at doing, what did Tom say? If we're looking at doing all three of them, we're probably looking at about $3.50 to $4 a square foot. If we just do one of them, we're probably looking at $4 a square foot. Okay. So the overlay of the full parking lot in the sports complex would be about 41,000 square feet. So it's a lot at $3 a square foot.
Do you have them ranked by priority? We can't do them all?
No, but I'll ask Tom. We'll do that. I would say probably the new one on the backside of the skate park is probably, it'd be hard to say. Probably the driving one first, and then the other two would be secondary. Maybe
The speed bump to speed bump.
speed bump, I think would be probably the first priority. Gets the most wear and tear.
Right.
And then maybe the existing path would be last, I'm guessing, because I don't know. I'd have to go through that with Tom and just make sure, but we'll prioritize them before we come in. Any questions on those? We don't really have approval on that because it's going out to bid. We just wanted to let you know what we were going out to bid on.
So it's the same depth for an overlay as doing something brand new. Because some of
Yes.
this that you're talking about is new,
Yep.
and some of it's going over existing. They literally go over the existing asphalt with a 2-inch overlay.
Correct.
I was under the assumption that if there's already something down, that it might be, I mean, honestly, that it might be a little less expensive being the process has already been started.
Well, but you're doing a 2-inch, you're still doing 2 inches. It's more about the material and less about, I think, the work. Because you're still doing 2 inches compacted depth, so it's still the same amount of asphalt.
But in
Per
that
square
sports complex parking lot,
Mhm.
having looked at that parking lot, I remember walking around looking at it, it wouldn't be possible to repair it. We're beyond repair in terms of patching.
Mhm.
I know we talked about the cracks, but we didn't necessarily talk about major dips or things that were not repairable as much.
We didn't
That's just
talk
where my
into
mind's
that.
going.
It's just at this point in time, our best move is to, rather than piecemeal it, overlay the entire thing. Because again, if you're starting to talk about patchwork, then your cost per square foot goes up. Our best bang for our buck is if we do it all at once.
The other thought I had was the sports complex. If we indeed have a turf field and we're doing all that work on it, now you're going over our newly paved surface to work on something brand new. So that's where my mind went. And whether or not
That's why, that's part of why that's the alternate, is because we're looking at that and talking about what our options are with the sports complex as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, we don't want them driving over completely new asphalt with their big
Right.
trucks.
Now that we've moved it to that area. I mean, I don't know other ways you would access that.
Okay. Any other questions, thoughts on the asphalt projects? Okay.
All right. If there is no further discussion, we shall adjourn
Huh?
at 7:25.
Oh, hey, there's Matt. Hey,
Hello, guys.
And goodbye.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we don't have a camera in this room, do we?
Well, I'm always trying to figure that out as well.
Okay.
Where exactly, they can't see us at all? There's nothing in here?
No,